heard or have not heard, within our community, there was a group of leaders, of unprecedented cross-sector of leaders who have come together to advance racial equity. And what they decided they wanted to do was make an economic case for racial equity. And as we've heard from the last two presentations, that really is an innovative way for companies to ensure that their bottom line continues to grow through innovation, diversity of team membership. And so one of the initiatives that the Greater Buffalo Racial Equity Roundtable thought would be imperative for our community was really to help companies in developing the capacity to make their workplaces inclusive. And so we worked with the Race Matters Institute on creating this particular training. It was introduced to our Western New York employer community in 2016, and it is a 4-part series. So what it is, it was designed specifically for CEOs in their C-suite, leaders in particular, because as we're looking at making an economic case for racial equity and advancing racial equity within our community, we realized that a lot of issues surrounding inclusive workplaces stem around policies, practices, and procedures. And due to this stemming around policies, practices, and procedures, the ones who are most in control of those are your CEOs and your C-suite, and also middle management. Anyone who has the ability to, create a policy for their company or even are responsible for benefits. And so the first part of this 4-part series is really a 4-hour training for that C-suite, for the leadership team, that takes into consideration 3 things. All participants will first get a shared understanding regarding the history as to why communities of color exist the way they do today, which is heavily based in policy that was created intentionally at the federal level. The training goes into aspects of the GI Bill, as well as FHA lending practices and redlining, but a number of federal policies that created the communities that you see. And as we all know, our taxes kind of speak towards, the education that you receive within communities, as well as other public services that make communities, position them to be able to grow and be able to compete in our local economy. So there is a shared understanding about our own local history and how that's reflected within our community. The second thing that our C-suite and leaders would receive is a shared language around racial equity, different terminologies, communication. The teams that participate would work together to get like a shared definition as to what does this actually look like? What is equity? And truthfully, the bottom line, as I believe Angela Glover-Blackwell mentioned earlier today in her keynote presentation, is this is not a zero-sum game. What we are actually doing with racial equity is giving people what they need best based on where they're situated. And as you do that, you will find that you're not taking from one particular person or group to make that happen. You're actually situating people so they can come back and be productive and contribute in ways that stimulate our overall economy, causing neighborhoods to be more vibrant and grow, causing banks to have more savings accounts, more loans, businesses to prosper because more people have money in their pocket. So there is an overall economic benefit to, making your workplace inclusive and to making sure that people get what they need based on where they're situated, because they can come back and be productive within our community. The third thing that the first part of this series offers is a shared tool that any CEO or executive or leader should use before actually implementing any particular policy, practice, or procedure. This tool, just to give an example of why it's so important, if you are a let's say you're the CEO of an organization and your company did phenomenal in sales last year. And one of the things that you want to do as a benefit to everyone in the corporation is give them a gym membership, a free gym membership as a reward. If you do not apply this tool before you release that benefit, you might come to work the next day after you've, given this wonderful gift to your employees, and you're like, oh, wow, I feel good about myself. I feel good about the company. We're going to have wonderful morale around, this gift that we've given to our team members. And what you find is that it's not so. As a matter of fact, you have a group of individuals that are disgruntled, not happy. Well, when that CEO steps back and actually applies the tool to that particular benefit, they would learn, and actually what the tool is it gives them the opportunity to apply a racial equity lens to that benefit. What they find and what they learn is that within communities of color, there are no gyms, there are no LA Fitnesses, no huge catalyst gyms. And so this particular benefit now starts to look like it was for a specific population as opposed to everyone. In addition to that, even if you do have people from communities of color that say, I like this membership, I'm excited about this, they might find it difficult to get to the place of where the membership is available to them due to transportation restraints. That's just an example, but what the tool does is it helps you on the front end of releasing that particular benefit or designing a policy or practice or procedure to apply that racial equity lens and be able to mitigate and eliminate any types of issues that would result. And think about it, that particular benefit was something that was going to be good and wonderful for your team. And at the end of the day, it turned out to have a negative result when the racial equity lens was not applied. And so within this first part one of this 4-part series, you get those 3 pieces. So again, just to recap for the part one, you get a shared understanding regarding the history as to why communities of color exist the way they do today. The second thing you get is a shared language around race. And then the third thing you get is a shared tool that any decision maker should use before they release any type of policy, practice, or procedure. The part one training is 4 hours. It was designed that way intentionally because we know that the demand on businesses is that, they have to always watch the bottom line and make sure they're paying attention to what's going on in the company. And so to pull a CEO and their C-suite or their leadership team away for a day or a 2-day type training would be a little difficult. So this training was designed specifically with that type of intentionality around the schedules of CEOs and their leadership teams. The second part of the training is another 4-hour training, but it's not for the full group that participated in part one. What you would do with your organization is identify 2 champions, 2 people to ensure that the training that your team participated in, your group of 30 participated in, is actually applied. It is not lost. It's not like when you go to a conference, and you get all this wonderful learning and all this, expert advice, and you're motivated and excited to come back to work and just really get at it. And then you find that you have a stack of other things that have been waiting, and it kind of pushes all those experiences and learnings that you had at the conference aside. This training was designed to make sure that you have 2 people that can constantly champion the usage of the learning. And so what they would experience is another 4-hour training with the Race Matters Institute, where they would spend more time with the tool. They would go through a number of examples, different scenarios, because they're going to be the ones, again, to kind of remove any type of challenges or issues that your team might be experiencing as they begin to move forward with the tool as well. And also just to say, hey, great job. Are you making sure you're asking these questions? When you go and you post for a position, did you run that job posting through a racial equity lens? These two people within your organizations who are empowered by the CEO would be those champions and receive that additional training. So part 3 of the 4-part series for those 2 coaches would be follow-up support sessions. And those happen in 4 monthly 90-minute sessions, again, with the Race Matters Institute, our lead facilitators on this particular initiative. And what they do in those 90-minute sessions, the very first session, going back to making sure this is not a one and done type of a training, your coaches would begin to develop a work plan. So they would hear and they would learn from organizations that have taken the racial equity impact analysis training, gone back to their businesses and created an actionable accountability metric to make sure that policies have been identified. It doesn't even have to be a policy. Sometimes it's as simple for your work plan as identifying a team to work with the coaches to identify different areas within your business to make sure that your overall workplace becomes inclusive. But the first 90-minute segment is focused on creating that work plan. And Dr. Dressel, who is the lead facilitator for the Race Matters Institute, as well as the other organizations she brings in as examples, they lead you through a conversation as to how do you even identify. And one of the key things in identification too is not to be over ambitious. Yes, we all are eager to make sure that our workplaces are inclusive and welcoming to everyone. However, we don't want to set goals that are so lofty or maybe even would take 5 or 6 years to occur, that we would put them on a work plan in 1 year. And then when we don't achieve those goals, then our morale goes down and we feel like we're in this impossible mission to do something that just can't happen. And so Paula, through these particular support sessions, would be walking your team members along the way to make sure that the goals you identify within your plan are actionable, they're feasible, and in some cases low-hanging fruit, because low-hanging fruit can, when you achieve it, give you the momentum to continue to move forward. So that's part 3 of the 4-part series. And then truly the 4th part of this series is very simple. Everyone who participated in part 1 would receive an invitation to join Slack. Slack is a social media network site where people can connect and continue to interact with each other, engage with each other, have conversations around, what each organization is doing, as well as instant message the Race Matters Institute with any type of barriers they might be having, any questions they might be having. And the Race Matters Institute also populates this particular site with current and relevant information that will guide your organization as you continue to move forward on your racial equity journey. The Slack piece is optional, but everybody does receive an invitation. And it actually came about as a result of participants who have been through the coaches session saying that, we want to remain connected to each other. And how can we do that? How can we maintain a connection and kind of encourage each other and sharpen each other as we move forth on this journey? And so we created this particular site. What is noteworthy to mention is that within our community, within the Western New York community, we've had 3,236 leaders, which represents major employers, as well as our Erie County government, city government, law enforcement. We've done training with media in our community. So we have these leaders that have been prepared and equipped to actually insert the racial equity lens into their decision-making processes. And as you can see, that represents 123 unduplicated organizations. I emphasize unduplicated because a number of organizations, after they've sent their initial team through the part 1 racial equity impact analysis training, they've also sent follow-up teams. Within county government, we've done Erie County deputy executive polling cars immediate leadership team, including polling cards, and then Erie County began drilling down deeper through their commissioners and then their directors to make sure that they would all be able to insert their racial equity analysis tool into all of their decision-making processes throughout Erie County. Sorry, my slide is, oh, there we go. So what you need to know in terms of non-negotiables, as I put it on my slide, is that in order to be effective with the racial equity impact analysis training, it is imperative and an absolute that the CEO or the top leader, whether it is an executive director, a program, whoever the top leader is of the organization, they have to be on board with the racial equity impact analysis training. This training is designed again for that kind of like the C-suite, so that they can get a better understanding regarding how policy actually affects the entire team. So they have to be on board. In addition to that, when you select your coaches that will get the follow-up training, the coaches need to be empowered with the authority from the CEO to be able to go throughout the organization and ask those questions about, how are you doing with the tool? Are you using the tool? The accountability and evaluation really goes to the work plan that I mentioned a little while ago. Each organization that participates within the racial equity impact analysis training would create a work plan. That work plan is not going to be checked by Dr. Dressel from the Race Matters Institute or the Community Foundation. However, that is something for you. That is something for you and your team to create and use as a tool to say, hey, where are we? Are we on point with what we said we wanted to do to make our workplace inclusive? There is an evaluation piece that the Community Foundation might reach out to you in year 2 or so after actually participating in the racial equity training. But that piece is just to see, where are you at? Do you need any additional assistance? Do you need to be connected to the Race Matters Institute or any other organization that might be offering training that might be relevant or useful for your organization? And also to see what has the impact been over the past couple of months since you have taken the training. We do ask that each organization that signs up for the racial equity training sign a memorandum of understanding. The memorandum of understanding really just speaks to a commitment to following through with each part of the racial equity training, part 1, 2, and 3, especially part 4 is optional. But it's not anything that we would take you to court over and say, oh, you didn't do your MOU, but again, it's just another accountability measure to make sure that the training is effective for you and for our overall Western New York community. And then the other non-negotiable is that you would be required to select 2 individuals from within your organizations to become a coach to champion the use of this actual learning. So I did mention early on that we've had a number of major employers that have participated in the training. And so one of the things that I did want to bring forth is that, these companies have taken this training back and they have made some major decisions, such as hiring chief diversity officers to lead the effort. Some decided that before they go into hiring a chief diversity officer, what they would do was create a culture. They would have several people as the chief diversity officer, we just heard from Melissa Donaldson mentioned, that, find other people within the organization at different levels that seem to be speaking the same language you are, seem to be passionate about the things that you're trying to do within your organization, and then create a team of people to kind of help lead and move forward advancing the inclusive workplace within your organization. Some of the organizations and businesses that have participated have used this tool with their strategic plan development and review. We've worked with a number of colleges in our community with their student support services and their student, when they come back to college, like making sure that the events and the opportunities that they are making available are inclusive of all, and not just for race, but also for gender and other issues. And so they've used this tool, even though it says racial equity, that racial equity piece is inclusive of all. We're building something that speaks to people of color, but everybody gets to take advantage and have opportunity because the doors open wider as a result of applying this tool. We, as well as other organizations, have also used it for our talent recruitment and retention policy. So at the Community Foundation, one of the first things that we did after taking the racial equity training was we went back to our talent recruitment policy, and we used the racial equity lens and really combed through our job postings. We combed through our policy. There is a policy, a hiring policy called I think it's the Mickey Rooney rule, which came out of the NFL. And what it basically says is that any candidate pool upon completion of interviewing should have at least one person of color in there as a viable candidate for the position. And so what we did is we kind of incorporated that into our strategy. And I can tell you that even though we have that written down and within our policy, because we've used the racial equity tool for our postings and where we're posting at in other different places, we found that regardless of having this within our policy, our final selection pools for candidates that are working at the Community Foundation or have the opportunity to work at the Community Foundation have had more than one person of color represented. And so this racial equity training has been very effective for us. I'm going to stop there because I want my colleague, Sarah, to tell you a bit about her experience as well. There is a cost to the training. We could talk about that further. I did give you my contact information on the front end, but at this moment, I will turn it over to Sarah Domanowski to talk about her experience with the training.
Thank you so much, Felicia, and thank you everybody for being here today. I'm truly honored that Felicia asked me to join her in today's session to chat and share a little bit more about our story, how the training impacted our company and what we've been able to do since then. So we kind of did this in a reverse fashion. So let me take a step back. I apologize. I should probably introduce myself just a little bit further. I am the manager of talent acquisition for FIFCO USA. Locally in Buffalo, you might know us as Labatt USA. If you are familiar in Rochester, the Genesee Brewery, and then another one of our brands that people are very familiar with is Seagram's Escapes. So we are an adult beverage company with locations in Buffalo and Rochester and a sales force throughout the country. So back to why I'm here today. So we actually started our journey through to build a D&I strategy really with the symposium 2 years ago in June of 2019. It was the first action that a handful of us from the HR team took to learn a little bit more and just open up our eyes to see what we needed to do. Because of this symposium, we ended up signing up and taking a group of managers and individual contributors through the racial equity impact analysis training. That session was in October of 2019, and we had a mix of, or we had somebody representing every area of our business, from operations, supply chain, sales, marketing, IT, finance, and the entire HR team was there. It was truly an eye-opening experience for a number of people because of some of the content that was taught and what we were able to learn. Individuals walked away from the training thinking that they had walked through life being racist and having incredible bias when all they just were not aware of what they were doing and how that really affected others. So that's what really kicked off. I mean, outside of the symposium, but this was the most eye-opening experience that we could have taken managers through to really set common ground for us to start our journey together. After the training was completed, it was about 33 individuals that joined the training. We sent a message out to this group inviting them to form a committee, a D&I committee, to begin to build that strategy out for our company, which initially composed, or was, I think we started with about 15 out of those 33, so close to half, and a fairly large number of HR representatives. We're now at about 28 people on this council, so it has slowly grown over the last year and a half. We had our first meeting together as a council March 5th of 2020, 1 week before the entire world shut down. And we were able to do that meeting in person. And then about a month and a half later, we started our virtual meetings to keep the work going. So the whole purpose of the council was truly to build a strategy, and we took a look at what the company needs were, what we felt. We did a lot of brainstorming. We had some data as far as what our population, our employee population was, what our surrounding population was in the two cities in Buffalo and Rochester, and then continued to move from there. A year or so later, as we look back, we're very overzealous in our plan and trying to probably do a lot more than what was needed. So we've been able to take a step back and really reflect on where the business is at and what we can manage, and then create a plan to be able to move forward. Within our strategy, though, what we landed on was talent acquisition. So really looking at the talent attraction, the recruitment and selection, our practices, how we're partnering with the community. We are working on an engagement and inclusion pillar, which has helped to launch and relaunch employee resource groups that had started a couple of years ago before ERGs were even part of our vocabulary and our DNA. And then we've also been working with under a training pillar to launch a number of trainings for our executive team, as well as our senior leadership. And then towards the end of this year and beginning of next year, we'll start to take our the rest of our employees through the similar trainings or similar content. Some of our challenges that we face that I think we've also learned from the racial equity impact analysis training is we cannot approach this is not a one-size-fits-all approach for our company. We have about 500 to 600 employees that do not have email, so just being able to communicate with them what we're looking for, what they are asking for as well, has been a huge challenge for us. And then obviously the remote and kind of having to do a reset with COVID and all the challenges that we faced. So overall, if we were to move forward, we have a little bit of a change in our executive team since we took the group through the training in 2019, and some of our executive team members were not part of it. I would put them through it tomorrow if I could. I think that it's something that's truly valuable for everybody in terms of just setting that common language, that common ground, and having that start point for an organization to be able to really build a D&I strategy. I think, Felicia, I was just going to give a quick overview, but I know just from a timeline perspective, we want to give time for questions.
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, we wanted to save this portion of our session for that. So the floor is open. You can either drop your questions in the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, please do. No questions? Were we that thorough?
I have a quick question. You indicated at the beginning of the program how to get involved with this racial equality training. Can you provide that information again?
How to access the training?
Yes, please.
Yes, so you would just reach out to me. My name is Felicia Beard again, but my email, which I'll drop in the chat, is Felicia, Felicia, B, excuse me, at cfgb.org.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we have so just so you all know, the Race Matters Institute is an organization that's not local. It is a national organization. They come out of the it began out of the Annie E. Casey Foundation, but they operate out of Atlanta, Oakland, California, We have a couple of facilitators from Baltimore as well, and we do have one local person, Anthony Armstrong. For those of you who may know Anthony, he's worked with the University of Buffalo's Regional Institute. Those are our facilitators, and that's the organization that brings this training. And so we work with their schedule. And so the schedule is sometimes a little limited, especially in light of everything that happened last year, kind of increased the demand in our community for this training. One thing that we do tell businesses, if you are planning to take this training, we don't say it just like this, but bottom line is if you're planning to take this training as a check the box, we took racial equity training, that's not what this type of training is. It is a comprehensive package. As I said, it is a 4-part series. We ask you to sign the MOU. We expect that you will create a work plan. We expect that you will go back to your organization, identify some key areas or key things that you actually want to change to make your place inclusive. A lot of companies have come forth and they say, we have a problem with retention. We need to know about retention. Well, sometimes the bottom line of retention, especially with people of color, is that your environment is not welcoming. It is not by the fault necessarily all the time of the company per se, but when you start to look into the policies and the way things read, even subconsciously and kind of subliminally, it sends a message that kind of doesn't foster people staying in those different businesses. So this particular training helps you to be able to see that, helps you to be able to work through making the appropriate changes so that your workplaces can become a little more inclusive. So, if you're interested, please reach out to me. I did recently receive our second half of the year schedule, and we can get something on the calendar. Again, there is a cost to the training. So for the whole entire package, the cost is $5,000. Don't feel scared by that number, because what it is for 30 of your leadership team members, 30 people within your organization, they receive the overall training, and then you get those additional follow-up pieces. And truthfully, when you look at the number of 5,030, it comes to an equivalent of about $157 per person that's being trained. And then you get all of that support that comes along with it.
Felicia, there was a question from the chat. Is there a specific tool a company can use to evaluate their job postings to be more inclusive?
Yeah, the racial equity impact analysis tool. I call it, so when I first started in this area and I found out about the racial equity impact analysis tool, and please don't laugh at me, but I was really looking for some type of a tool. And it really is a set of questions that any decision maker should stop and intentionally ask before moving forward with any particular decision. And so when you go through the training, after you get that grounding in our history, after you get that foundation of a common language, then you go to, okay, now that we're all on board with this, let's look at how do we ask these questions, and let's talk through these questions as we apply it to a specific policy that we have within our organization. So the Race Matters Institute on the prep call with your CEO and whomever the CEO decides to bring to that initial telephone call, they ask for the purposes of the training that you would identify a real example within your organization that your team can work on during the this part of the training. So you even walk away that day with I don't want to call it an issue, but a potential opportunity to make a change even after taking the training that day.
Here's one from Maureen Connell. Are there there's trainings that someone could take to become a DE&I leader or director?
So I don't have an answer for that. I didn't necessarily take a training to become, in this particular area for myself. I ended up here through just schooling. I think that Harvard like there's a couple of universities that have like a certificate program. I don't have them off the top of my head in terms of where you could go. If anybody does know of something, maybe you could drop it in the chat box to be helpful. Otherwise, I can research that. And if you want to reach out to me, maybe like in a couple of days, I'll see if I can get you a more specific answer for that. Oh, never mind. I don't have to do that. Some wonderful helpers in the audience today. So thank you.
Here's a general question from Natalia Land. What is the best way to get into this field of work?
So, again, I kind of just fell into this field of work through my experience in working in the community and through my relationships. And I think also it's just through your passion and your desire, how you prepare yourself, your individual learning experience. You know, you can go to school, but you also, outside of school, I'm sure you're often improving yourself through reading, reading current books, articles, magazines. And then there's a number of organizations now that are looking to hire people in this particular area. And I don't know if Sarah has, because Sarah's in HR, she might have a better answer than I.
I mean, I think I also, there was a need in our organization that was identified. And so since a lot of, in terms of building a diverse workforce comes from talent attraction, it fell under my area of my function that I lead, I suppose is the best way to put it. But I think there's definitely other ways, even just to pilot programs within your organization if there's a need. I don't know that you can learn with your organization, I think, if that's something that you're interested in getting into.
So again, I mean, I think we only have like a couple more minutes. Seth, are we over at 2:45?
Yes.
Yeah, so I just would like to say, and maybe Sarah has a couple of last words too, since we don't have too many questions, that what makes me proud in this Western New York community is to see that we truly have, I mean, the numbers that I gave you guys in the beginning are not, numbers that we have inflated or created, but we have over 3,200 of our community leaders who have decided that they are going to use a racial equity lens within their organizations to make sure that they are doing as best they can to create a workplace that is inclusive and inviting for all people. And that's encouraging for me, and that gives me hope for our region. And I'm very appreciative that you all decided to join our session today. And I think this is something that we can be proud of in our community. Sarah?
I agree. And I think just speaking from a company perspective, as we saw that there was a need, I've worked here for FIFCO USA, previously North American Breweries, for 7 years now. And the work that we're doing now, the support from our executive leadership team, especially our CEO, and what we're doing really gives me hope and makes the team, the council themselves, feel like we're doing work that actually matters and can be fulfilled. So I think that the outlook is bright. It's not easy. We're learning every day. I am learning every single minute of every single day about the work that I'm doing, and I absolutely love it. So I'm going to drop my email in the chat as well. If anybody wanted to reach out, I'm happy to network and learn from all of you on this call too. But I think what everybody's doing and participating and learning is the right step.
We have 3 minutes. I did see there's a question about potential benefits of the training if an organization has a current D&I strategy and are already on the journey. The benefits of this training is not like your traditional diversity and inclusion training. This training speaks specifically about policy. It speaks about policies that were intentionally created by government to advance one group and keep other groups down. And I've sat in a number of the trainings, and I've seen well-educated people say, wow, we weren't taught this in school. I have my master's in education. I have my, you know, PhD. I work in this field, and we never knew this. And I used to joke, and I would say, oh, I see the light bulbs going off on people. And it wasn't so much the light bulbs, obviously. It's more of that aha moment. And people truly come back realizing and recognizing that while we live in the United States of America, everybody cannot pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And people don't wake up every day and say, you know, I don't want to do anything today. Most people want to be productive and want to live a good, healthy, wholesome, happy, fruitful life. And you get that once the awareness, as Sarah mentioned in her presentation, is expanded, where people can see that there truly are things that have kept people oppressed and unable to be successful within our country.
Hi, I have a quick question, really quick question. So I'm interested to know, have you heard back from anyone who has shared what they have implemented following the training? Because it's very important what you said. It was well, Felicia, what you said in reference to, this is just not your average program. If you're just trying to check the boxes, you know, this is intense in terms of, you know, the work that's involved in it and the commitment. So I'm just interested to know, has anyone followed up with you to say, hey, following this, besides Sarah, of course, you know, to share with you what they have actually put into action following taking this course?
Yes, so we have, we're required at the Community Foundation, one of our funders has us do an annual evaluation. And so we follow up with the organizations to say, you know, where are you? How have you used the training? So some of the examples I showed you, like some people did Chief Diversity Officers, some people used it for their strategies on college campuses, some people used it for their strategic plan reviews or sharpenings. So we know specific things that people have done. Our next step with our evaluation, because we introduced this in 2016, and we do understand too that, you know, it's going to take time. It's behavior and, you know, institutional change, inclusive workplaces, it's going to take some time. And so this upcoming year, we're now measuring what type of impact has resulted. You know, yes, you've created some of these positions, but now what is the true impact within your organization? To the best that we can get that information, we are going to be asking that